do is I'll just start leaf blower. All right. That on. Hi. We're out here in peaceful Long Island, and I was asked to discuss drawing. Materials become really crucial to this. You've probably heard all kinds of things and maybe looked at a lot of drawings, and in my lifetime, I've managed to work with just about anything. Your spit, your graphite, your charcoal, your water, it all works. Of the two kinds of drawing that I became most involved in is when you look at something like a tree or a dog or a bush or a house, and you look at something and you draw it. The other kind is a sort of an engagement with your materials. If you like the velvety smoothness of a piece of graphite, which is this stuff, and it gets on your fingers kind of nicely, or a pencil like this, which has an H on it. The H means hard. The harder the lead, the softer the line. These darker pencils have a softer lead. They're usually green. At least since I was a student, these kind of pencils, they're green. They go all the way up, I think, to 9 or maybe 12H. That's the hardest type of lead, and it makes the lightest kind of line. See that? So if you're shading an area, you might just want to start out with a paler line and then move it into something darker. And I think if you look a lot at classical artists, you'll find they did an awful lot of this. I myself was shown this. Use a little spit. See? Kind of makes it. I started doing this when I read that Henry Matisse said something very important, something all of you should keep in mind if you're drawing. Henry Matisse said that drawing is painting with a pencil. Got that? So don't think there's a division between drawing and painting. The two, for 500 years now or longer, have been closely interrelated. And if you go back enough in the history of art, you'll find that drawing and carving are interrelated. In fact, one stone worker that I know up in the Catskill Mountains, he draws with chainsaw chisels into bluestone. So drawing becomes an activity in which we find lights and darks, we find round things and straight edge things, and we build these pictures. And sometimes the picture is an internal, spontaneous thing, and sometimes it's something we're looking at. So, with enough of that, my own drawing style, which I set out a couple of pieces, are recent works of mine. I'm trying to mix drawing and painting, and I render forms like a guitar or a cow because I like to balance out this idea that a painting is a free-formed, spontaneous activity, and a drawing is something closely studied. So I'm going to just give a few quick demos on some drawing techniques that maybe you just haven't encountered. This type of scribbling is, I'm showing you to work at an easel, but most of the time there's a lot of freedom to be found if you're working on the ground. And if you're on the floor, you can back away, you can get up close, you can take your hard pencil, you might want to make a circle, you might want to make a totally blackened area, and if you're really slick, I work a lot, I've found I work a lot with water, because water will then add something to your drawing that you're really not going to get unless you spend hours and hours and hours scribbling. Now, if you're like most people, you might not have a lot of time, but see the cool effects that come out. Do you see how the brush stroke becomes almost like a scribble? Now, if I had to do this with this pencil, I'd be here for 8 hours. I've learned to draw things very quickly, and in any given day, I might make 5 or 6 drawings. I'll also raise the point to you, if you're working on your drawings, if you stay focused on one thing, you'll probably spin your wheels a little bit, like a tractor in the mud. But if you do series of drawings, if you work quickly and turn the pages and move on and experiment with different materials, you'll probably make a lot more progress in your drawing. Now, I showed you this for a particular reason. This is actually watercolor paper. I want to spend a minute or so discussing materials. Your drawing materials are going to make or break your drawing. If you're buying ratty paper, it's probably not going to work too good. I myself go with what's called a cold press paper. Cold press means it's coarser, it takes more abuse. You're free to do many things on a sheet of paper instead of just be restricted to a pencil. So this is actually watercolor paper. The 2 types of paper I recommend, watercolor paper, and I'm going to show you from my first drawing class, which was over 35 years ago. This is Stonehenge printmaker's paper. It's called a rag paper. It means it's not made so much from pulp, it's made more like a fabric. We usually handle it like this because you don't get any creases. It hangs freely. It's really a beautiful paper. If you want to spend hours and hours working on a drawing, buy yourself a good sheet of this. You can buy it in bulk, all kinds of outlets for it. Try Jerry's Adorama. I recommend this highly. My first drawing teacher required I work on it, so I'm going to toss that your way. There's a lot of papers on the market. There's bristle paper, which is good for ink. But this stuff, if you like drawing in pencil and you like drawing in charcoal and you like to use a little water or a little spit or even a little bit of paint, this is what you want. Unless you want to move right along to a piece of canvas, which I do a lot of. But what you can do on paper that you can't do on canvas is, where's my little, one of these nifty little things, which maybe you had one of these in grade school, the eraser. The eraser allows you to the eraser becomes a kind of a tool where you get broken line. You then can move in either with pointed pencil or a flat piece of graphite, get your shaded areas, apply a little moisture. Move in with that. I'm just moving freely here just to give you an idea of the technique. The bigger idea here is to not feel too restricted. You don't want to stare at something and get too uptight. In fact, my tendency while drawing is the more I work, the looser and freer I get. It's okay to start out uptight. I'm showing you this because you can always erase it. You'll find using an eraser freely helps your overall drawing. Don't be afraid to make a mistake. Every mistake is an opportunity to try out a new technique. This is a bigger idea, and without beating it to death, but see how graphite in a piece of damp paper works, just made this beautiful little thing. I couldn't have done that. I couldn't have done that if I thought of it. But these are the kinds of things a lot of artists really work to find. And that can become the basis of a whole drawing. Might win you a prize in an art show. It's the kind of thing, at least the art critics used to look for. They call that a happy accident. To me, I just call it drawing. You start to see how the changes in the overall drawing start to bring out things. So there's a sense of forward and backward. Now I'm kind of laboring this because I'm going to leap to a different trick. When you've gotten used to this moisture and graphite and eraser, these are our other friends in the art of drawing. I like to point these out because since I think my very first art class, I fell in love with this stuff. This is natural charcoal. This is literally like if you have a fire in your house and you pull out of the fireplace some pieces of charcoal, and it's great. It gets on your fingers. That's part of the drawing materials. This is compressed charcoal. This is like this, but it's actually compressed. I'm not quite sure how they do it, but it makes a more sharper line. And what else did I have? Well, we've gone over pencils. Oh, I just wanted you to get a look at this. This is from a different brand. Beautiful stuff. Simply beautiful. If you love this stuff, you'll probably be a great draftsman. This is what all classical artists used. You get it on your finger a little bit like that. You notice the blackness of that? That's a finger with charcoal on it on a piece of wet paper. Kind of like the splatter. And you see it makes a different quality of darkness. Now the key to any successful drawing is how well you have the whitest and lightest areas and the deepest, darkest areas. And one thing you want to strive for in your drawing, which is true, I mean, you can go to the Met and check for yourself, but all great draftsmen were able to find different degrees of grayness and white and blackness. If you look at a Bronzino, for instance, or if you look at the Manets, or if you look at really all the Impressionist drawings are great, the Van Gogh drawings are great, because they were able to reach the blackest blacks with charcoal and a pencil, and they got the palest areas. You'll see like in a Van Gogh drawing how the whites of the eye and the blackness and deepness of the shadows are. It's fabulous. You want to master that. You want to be able to notice how earlier I was being aggressive, but look at how pale that is. That's pretty pale. Now when I was in school they said, well, 10 is the lightest and 1 is the darkest, right? So that's like, I don't know, an 8. Here's your charcoal, what this does. You can entirely blacken out the whole area. I'm not trying to draw anything specific, just to show you a few technical things that you can play with on your own. Again, the wet brush, you can do this. You'll get, see how this starts to shade a drawing. You start to get these wonderful little, really just great, look at the beauty in those blacks. Now again, if you were just working with this, never get there, it'd take you hours. So I like to teach, when I have people around, we usually get brown paper bag and we start playing a little bit, trying to find an area of comfort where you feel free enough and relaxed enough. You know, there's the classic cross hatch. I'm more of a And you start to see how you get a gray. Maybe you're not happy with that. You got your eraser. Right? Now, another point I'll raise here, you may begin to notice, you'll notice I work around the edges. It's a technical choice. People tend to start in the middle and work out, and then they find that their pictures lack a certain depth. It's just a choice I make. It's from over the years. If you work towards the edges and then work towards the middle, you're going to find that the picture just holds together a lot nicer. In other words, if you hang it on the wall, stand 10 feet away, it's going to look a little more cohesive. It's not going to look like, well, there's a face in the middle and then nothing around it. Some people like that, but I think you'll find if you play around with ideas, start in the middle, do a few drawings, start on the edges, do a few drawings, and work to free up your hand. This was a technique shown to me. Use the back of your hand. It makes a certain gentle grayness. Now, here's a good technique. It's called masking. Say, this little area, I like this, but I want us to focus there. So what you do is, you can take your hard pencil, you can actually, and Picasso did a lot of this, just gray it out just around the edges, and it'll call your attention to this. If you think it's not dark enough, no problem. Get a softer lead pencil, like this. And that takes you to one of those art school words, form. It starts to build up a little bit of a form. You can see I pretty much gave up shading with pencils a long time ago because they're very inefficient. They're good if you want these paler grays. See how you get a nice, beautiful pale gray there? You actually have to work it. I'm more of a charcoal guy. The other friend is the old rag. You can highlight areas, you can soften areas by rubbing them out. See what a beautiful gray you get? And then that area looks like it was actually deliberate when it was really, quite frankly, an accident. So here, just on this little practice drawing, we got an area of white, we got some line, we got some brush strokes. It's a whole variety of what you can achieve with some pencils, an eraser, a little bit of water, brush, and this is watercolor paper, or I recommend the printmaker's paper. All right. I'd like to show you some quick techniques about what you can do on a larger canvas. It's the heart of my own mixed media technique that I've been doing for about 5 or 6 years.